The wind off the North Sea carried the smell of salt and damp grass as Elliot scrambled up the worn stone steps, his sneakers slipping on patches of moss. Ozzy darted ahead, a black and white blur weaving between the ruined walls, his nose pressed to every crevice. "Slow down!" Evelyn called from behind him. "You'll miss something running that fast." Elliot stopped and turned, his notebook already open in his hand. "But what if there's something to find? You can't find things by standing still." Evelyn caught up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. At 12, she moved with a carefulness Elliot couldn't quite understand. She studied the archway beside them, running her palm across the weathered stone. Sometimes you find more by looking closely at what's right in front of you. The Priory's whispers, 3 Tynemouth Priory stretched around them, its ancient walls open to the sky. Sunlight caught the edges of broken columns and traced long shadows across the grass. Their parents had settled on a bench near the entrance with a guidebook and a thermos of tea, and the afternoon belonged to the children. Ozzy barked once, sharp and sudden, from somewhere near the cliff-top wall. "What's he found?" Elliot was already moving. The terrier stood with his front paws on a low section of stone, tail stiff, nose working at a patch of masonry half hidden by ivy. Elliot crouched beside him and pushed the leaves aside. The stone underneath looked older than the rest, its surface worn smooth in places, but marked with something that didn't match the natural weathering. "Evelyn, come look at this." She knelt next to him, and together they traced the lines carved into the stone. They were too regular for cracks, too deliberate for tool marks. A series of shapes ran in a horizontal band, some of them overlapping, others spaced with odd precision. "It's not just decoration," Evelyn said. "See how this one repeats? And this symbol here. It's not from any period the Priory was built in." The Priory's whispers. 4. Elliot pulled his torch from his backpack and clicked it on, angling the beam low across the stone. The sidelight made the carvings jump into relief. "There's a pattern. Look, these 3 marks, then a gap, then 5 more. It's like a sequence." A cipher. Evelyn's voice was quiet, the way it got when she was working something out. "Someone carved a message into the wall." Elliot's hand moved across his notebook, sketching the symbols as fast as he could. His pencil scratched against the paper, while Ozzy snuffled at the base of the wall, sneezing once at the dust. "This one's almost gone," Elliot said, pointing to a faint mark near the bottom of the band. "It's smaller than the others, and it's not carved as deep. I almost didn't see it." Evelyn leaned in. "You're right. It's a different hand, too. Someone added it later." She sat back on her heels. "So we have the original cipher, and then someone else came along and added a correction, or a clue. Why would anyone carve a secret message into a priory wall? Maybe because it wasn't always a ruin. Maybe someone wanted to leave information for someone else, somewhere it wouldn't be noticed." The Priory's whispers. 5. Ozzy barked again, scratching at a loose stone near the bottom of the wall. Elliot reached down and worked his fingers around the edge. The stone shifted, then came free with a dry scrape. Behind it, the hollow was packed with loose earth and fragments of broken mortar, and the rest of the cipher. 3 more symbols, these ones deeper and clearer, as if they'd been protected from the weather. Elliot's breath caught. "It's the rest of the message." He copied them into his notebook, his pencil moving in quick, precise strokes. Evelyn studied the sequence, her lips moving silently as she worked through the logic. "It's a substitution cipher," she said. "Each symbol stands for a letter. See how this one appears 3 times? It's probably a vowel." "E," Elliot said. "It's the most common letter." "Good. And this pair here, at the end of the second word? They worked through it together, Evelyn testing possibilities, while Elliot spotted the patterns. His memory for symbols and sequences meant he could hold the whole thing in his head, comparing marks Evelyn had already dismissed with ones she hadn't reached yet. Within 15 minutes, the message lay decoded across a fresh page of his notebook. The Priory's whispers, 6. Seek the guiding light where the keeper watches the sea. Elliot read aloud. The first key waits in the tower's shadow. Evelyn frowned. A guiding light. A keeper watching the sea. That has to be a lighthouse. St. Mary's, Elliot said. It's the closest one. You can see it from the cliffs. Ozzy whined and pawed at the hollow. Behind the loose stone. Elliot looked down and noticed something he'd missed in the excitement of the cipher. The earth in the hollow wasn't packed hard like the surrounding mortar. It was loose, freshly turned. And caught in the dirt was a faint smell, something rich and unfamiliar. Old leather. Pipe tobacco. Someone's been here, he said. Recently. Evelyn touched the disturbed soil. Whoever added that extra symbol. They came back to check on it. Or they were looking for the same thing we found. The thought settled between them, heavy and strange. The Priory had felt like their own private discovery, but the turned earth said otherwise. Someone else was searching. They packed up their things, Elliot tucking the notebook, the Priory's whispers 7, carefully into his backpack. Ozzy circled the wall one last time, then stopped, his head cocked toward the path that led down to the car park. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Elliot followed his gaze. A tall man stood near the edge of the ruins, silhouetted against the afternoon sky. He wore a long black leather coat despite the warmth of the day, and his silver-grey hair caught the wind. Even at a distance, Elliot could see he was watching them, not staring, just observing. The way Evelyn observed the archway, carefully, patiently. The man smiled, a small, quiet expression that didn't reach the rest of his face, then turned and walked toward the gate. His coat flapped once in the breeze before he disappeared around the corner of the visitor centre. "Who was that?" Elliot asked. Evelyn shook her head. "I don't know, but he was definitely watching us." Ozzy trotted back to the wall and barked once more, his nose pressed to the grass. Elliot crouched down and saw what the dog had found. Half buried in the loose earth beside the hollow, its brass surface catching the light, lay a pocket watch. It was antique, polished to a high shine, and still warm, as if it had been in someone's hand only moments before. The Priory's Whispers 8. Elliot picked it up and turned it over. The engraving on the back was small and precise, a single symbol identical to the one carved at the end of the cipher. "He dropped this," Elliot said. "The man in the black coat. He was right here." Evelyn took the watch and studied the engraving. "Then he knows about the cipher too, and he knows we decoded it." Elliot looked toward the gate where the stranger had vanished, then back at the watch in Evelyn's hand. The afternoon sun glinted off the Priory stones, and somewhere beyond the cliffs, a foghorn sounded low across the water. The Priory's Whispers, Ben. Chapter 2. The Lighthouse's Guiding Light. The morning had started with toast and a debate about whether Ozzy needed a special adventure harness. Evelyn had argued no, the ordinary one was fine. Elliot had argued yes, because this was St. Mary's lighthouse, not the park, and Ozzy knew the difference. Their mother, buttering a second round of bread, had ruled in Elliot's favour on the grounds that Ozzy was already sitting by the front door with the special harness in his mouth. Now, 2 hours later, the lighthouse rose white and narrow against a sky the colour of slate. The North Sea churned at its base, throwing spray that caught the late morning light and turned it into a haze of tiny rainbows. Elliot tipped his head back to follow the tower all the way up to the lantern room at the top, where glass panels glinted like a row of squared, the lighthouse's guiding light 10 off suns. "The keeper watches the sea," he said, mostly to himself. That's what the cipher said. So the keeper stood up there. But the message said the key waits in the tower's shadow. Evelyn unfolded the map she'd printed at home. The shadow moves with the sun. At this time of day it falls east. She turned, orienting herself. That way, toward the rock pools. Ozzy had already made his own calculations. His nose worked the ground in tight, urgent arcs, tracing the seam where the lighthouse's whitewashed wall met the coarse grass. He stopped at a patch of ground half hidden by a sprawl of sea thrift, pink flowers trembling in the wind, and gave a short declarative bark. Elliot crouched. Beneath the thrift, a rusted iron hatch sat flush with the earth, its edges blurred by moss and years of salt wind. A maintenance cover, old and forgotten. He ran his fingers along the rim and felt the give before he saw it. The hatch wasn't locked. It hadn't been locked in a long time. "Someone's been here," he said. "The moss is broken." Evelyn knelt beside him. "Crowe? Maybe, or someone before Crowe." Elliot pulled the lighthouse's guiding light 11 compact torch from his backpack and clicked it on, aiming the beam at the gap. Darkness swallowed the light almost immediately. "There's a drop. Not far. Maybe 4 feet. We need a plan. I'll go first. I've got the torch." "You always go first." "Because I've got the torch." Evelyn's jaw tightened. "And I've got the map, and the cipher notes, and the watch. And I'm older. And I'm the one who figured out the Priory message pointed here in the first place." Elliot looked at her. The wind pulled a strand of hair across her face, and she didn't push it away. He recognized the set of her shoulders. It was the same posture she'd had at the Priory when she'd realized the stranger was watching them. "Okay," he said. "You navigate. I'll light the way. We go together." "Together how?" "I take the front with the torch. You stay right behind me with the map and tell me if I'm about to walk into a wall. Ozzy stays between us." The lighthouse's guiding light 12. Evelyn considered this. "And if we find something, we both look at it before touching anything." "Deal." Ozzy, who had been waiting with the patience of a dog who knew the humans would eventually catch up, squeezed through the gap the moment Elliot lifted the hatch wide enough. A soft thump, then a single bark from below that echoed strangely, as if the space beneath the lighthouse was larger than it should be. Elliot swung his legs into the opening and dropped. The air changed immediately. The salt wind freshness of the surface gave way to something still and cold and faintly mineral, like the inside of a cave that hadn't seen daylight in a century. His torch beam picked out rough brick walls, a packed dirt floor, and Ozzy's tail wagging in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The dog stood at the entrance to a narrow passage, nose pointed into the dark. Evelyn landed beside him, softer than he had. She had the watch in her hand now, the one from the Priory, its engraved symbols catching the torchlight. "The passage runs east," she said, checking her map. "Under the tower's shadow, like the cipher said." They moved forward. The passage was tight enough that the lighthouse's guiding light 13. Elliot's shoulders brushed both walls, and the ceiling dipped low in places, forcing him to stoop. Ozzy stayed exactly between them, his claws clicking on the packed earth. The torch beam jumped and swayed with Elliot's steps, throwing shadows that seemed to rearrange themselves the moment he looked away. After 30 feet, the passage opened into a small chamber. It was circular, maybe 8 feet across, with a curved brick ceiling that suggested they were directly beneath the lighthouse's base. Against one wall stood a wooden shelf, warped with age, and on it lay a logbook bound in cracked leather. Beside the shelf, a series of markings had been scratched into the brick. They weren't the same symbols as the Priory cipher. These were simpler. Arrows, dots, a crude drawing of a bird in flight. Evelyn lifted the logbook with careful fingers and opened it. The pages were brittle, the ink faded to brown. She read aloud, her voice quiet in the dead air. Final entry. The collection is scattered. I have done what I can to mark the path. The first piece waits where the light meets the sea, but the true heart lies north, in Bamburgh's ancient shadow. Let those who follow understand. Not all who seek the collection seek to protect it. Trust the signs, not the seekers. The Lighthouse's Guiding Light, 14. A keeper wrote this, Elliot said. One of the old keepers. He was hiding something. He was warning someone. Evelyn turned the page, but the rest of the logbook was blank. The collection. What collection? Elliot didn't answer. He was staring at the wall markings, his torch held steady, the arrows and dots and the bird. Evelyn had been reading the logbook left to right, top to bottom, methodical and thorough. But Elliot's eye kept snagging on the bird. It wasn't part of the sequence. It was separate, drawn slightly apart, and the arrow beside it didn't point to the next symbol. It pointed down. "The bird's wrong," he said. "What do you mean?" "It's not part of the message. It's a marker. Look." He traced the arrow with his finger. "It's pointing at the floor." Ozzy, who had been sniffing at the base of the wall, let out a low whine and began to paw at a brick near the bottom of the curve. It was looser than the others, its mortar crumbling. "Ozzy found it first," Evelyn said. "Again." Elliot knelt and worked the brick free. Behind it, nestled into the lighthouse's guiding light, 15 hollow, that had been chiselled into the foundation stone, sat a small wooden bird. It was carved from dark wood, polished smooth by handling, its wings folded tight against its body, and its beak slightly open as if mid-song. Intricate didn't cover it. Every feather had been cut with a blade so fine that Elliot could see the individual barbs when he held it to the light. "The first piece," he breathed. "A remarkable find." The voice came from the passage behind them. Calm, measured, familiar in a way that made Elliot's stomach tighten before his brain caught up. Professor Malachai Crowe stepped into the chamber. He was tall and lean, his silver-grey hair catching the torchlight, his salt and pepper beard neatly trimmed. He wore a black leather coat, the same coat Elliot had seen vanishing through the Priory gate the day before. His steel-blue eyes moved from the wooden bird in Elliot's hand to the logbook in Evelyn's, and a smile touched the corners of his mouth. "You've made swift progress," he said. "I confess, I didn't expect you to decode the Priory cipher quite so quickly, nor to find this chamber. The keeper's hiding place has eluded me for weeks." Evelyn closed the logbook. "You've been following us." "The Lighthouse's Guiding Light, 16. "I've been following the same trail. Our paths merely intersect." Crowe gestured at the wooden bird. "That is the first key, one piece of a much larger puzzle. The Northumberland collection. Scattered centuries ago, hidden across the region by people who understood that some treasures are too valuable to be kept in one place." "What kind of treasures?" Elliot asked. "Historical artefacts, documents, objects that tell the true story of this part of England. The collection was assembled by a society of antiquarians in the 18th century, men and women who believed that history belonged to everyone, not just to museums and universities. When the society was disbanded, its members hid the collection piece by piece. The keeper of this lighthouse was one of them." Crowe's gaze settled on the wooden bird. "That carving is the first clue to the next location. I've been searching for it for a very long time." Elliot looked at the bird, then at Crowe. The professor's voice was calm, even warm, but there was something in the way he stood. Still, patient. A man who was used to waiting for exactly the right moment. "The keeper's logbook warned about people like you," Evelyn said. "Not all who seek the collection seek to protect it." Crowe inclined his head. The keeper was a cautious man, the lighthouse's guiding light 17. He had reason to be. But I assure you, my interest in the collection is purely scholarly. I want to see it preserved, studied, understood. He stepped past them, his coat brushing the wall, and pressed a brick near the shelf. A section of the wall slid inward with a grinding sound, revealing a narrow passage that sloped upward. Daylight spilled through from somewhere above. "Keep the bird," Crowe said. "You've earned it. But I suspect we'll meet again. The collection is large, and you children have a talent for finding things." He paused at the opening, half-turned. "Bamburgh's ancient heart. That's where the next piece waits. I'll see you there." Then he was gone, his footsteps fading up the hidden passage, and the wall slid shut behind him with a soft click. Elliot let out a breath he hadn't realised he'd been holding. Ozzy pressed his nose into Elliot's hand and whined. "He let us keep it," Elliot said. "Why would he let us keep it?" Evelyn was already examining the wall where Crowe had stood. A faint inscription had been scratched into the brick, so shallow that the torchlight barely caught it. She read it aloud. "Where Bamburgh's ancient heart beats beneath the stone, the second key sleeps in the vault of kings." "He left us another clue," she said. "He wants us to follow him. The lighthouse's guiding light 18. Or he wants us to find the next piece for him." Evelyn looked at the wooden bird in Elliot's hand, then at Ozzy, then back at the inscription. "Then we'd better find it first." The lighthouse's guiding light 19. Chapter 3. Bamburgh's hidden vault. The Northumberland coast stretched grey and endless beyond the car window, and Elliot pressed his forehead against the cold glass, watching Bamburgh Castle grow larger with every mile. It sat on its outcrop of volcanic rock like something carved from the sky itself, all sharp angles and ancient stone against the pale afternoon light. Ozzy shifted on the seat beside him, his small black and white body warm against Elliot's leg, and let out a soft whine. "Almost there, boy," Elliot murmured. Evelyn had the map spread across her knees, tracing the coastline with her finger. She'd been quiet since they left the lighthouse 2 days ago, turning the wooden bird over in her hands at breakfast, staring at the inscription they'd copied into Elliot's notebook. Their parents had agreed to the Bamburgh trip with surprising ease. Their dad had even said something about how nice it was that they were taking Bamburgh's hidden vault 20 such an interest in local history. Neither sibling had mentioned Professor Crowe. The castle car park was busy when they arrived, families spilling out of cars with backpacks and cameras, children running toward the entrance gate. Elliot tucked his notebook into his jacket pocket and clipped Ozzy's lead on. The dog's nose was already working, twitching at the salt wind. "Bamburgh's ancient heart," Evelyn said, reading from the notebook as they walked. "That's what the inscription said. But this place is enormous. Where do we even start?" "The oldest part," Elliot said. "The keep. That's the heart of any castle." They passed through the gatehouse and into the outer ward, where the wind dropped and the walls rose around them like cliffs. Elliot let his gaze drift across the stonework, the worn steps, the arched doorways. Other visitors moved in clusters, listening to audio guides, taking photographs. No one paid any attention to 2 children, and a terrier studying the masonry. Evelyn unfolded her historical map, a reproduction she'd found online and printed before they left. The keep was built in the 12th century, But there's older stuff underneath. Anglo-Saxon foundations. Maybe even Bamburgh's hidden vault 21 Roman. So, we need to go down, Elliot said. Ozzy tugged at the lead, pulling toward a quieter section of the inner ward where the walls curved away from the main path. Elliot followed, his trainers scuffing the uneven ground. The stone here was rougher, darker, the mortar crumbling in places. A gargoyle jutted from the corner of the wall above them, its eroded face tilted toward the sea. Elliot stopped. The gargoyle's left eye socket was deeper than the right, and something about the angle of it caught the light differently. He pulled out his notebook and sketched it quickly, then stepped back to compare his drawing with the real thing. "What is it?" Evelyn asked. "The eye. It's not carved the same as the other one. Look." Evelyn squinted up at the gargoyle. "You're right. It's smoother, like something's been fitted into it." Ozzy barked once, sharp and urgent, and began scrabbling at the base of the wall, where a loose slab sat slightly proud of its neighbours. His claws clicked against the stone, and his whole body quivered with the kind of intensity Elliot had learned to trust. Bamburgh's hidden vault, 22. "Good boy, Ozzy, good boy." Elliot crouched and ran his fingers along the edge of the slab. It shifted under his touch, just a fraction. "Evelyn, help me." Together, they worked the stone free, grunting with the effort. It came away with a scrape of rock on rock, revealing a narrow crack in the foundation, barely wider than Elliot's shoulders. Cold air breathed out of it, carrying a smell of dust and something older, something mineral and still. "A passage," Elliot whispered. Evelyn pulled her own small flashlight from her backpack. "I'll go first. You keep hold of Ozzy." "No way. I found it." "Elliot." "I found it," he said again, and this time she didn't argue. He switched on his flashlight and squeezed through the crack. The beam cut into the darkness ahead, lighting a corridor so narrow he had to walk sideways, his shoulder brushing the damp wall. The floor sloped downward, and the air grew colder with every step. Behind him, he heard Evelyn's breathing and the click of Ozzy's claws. The corridor opened into a chamber. Elliot's flashlight picked out a low ceiling, stone shelves cut into the walls, Bamburgh's hidden vault 23, and in the centre of the room, a pedestal. It was empty. Dust lay thick on every surface, but on the pedestal, the dust was disturbed. A rectangular impression marked where something had rested, recently enough that the edges were still sharp. Elliot ran his finger along the outline. "Someone got here first," he said. "Yes," said a voice from the shadows. "I did." Professor Malachai Crowe stepped into the beam of Elliot's flashlight, his tall figure resolving out of the darkness near a high vent in the far wall. The sliver of daylight from above caught the silver in his hair and the polished brass of the pocket watch chain at his waistcoat. In his hands he held a small wooden box, its surface carved with intricate knotwork. "You followed the trail," Crowe said. His voice was calm, measured, the same tone he'd used in the lighthouse chamber. "I wondered if you would." "That's the next piece of the collection," Evelyn said. "Isn't it?" Crowe tilted the box, letting the light play across its surface. "It is. A reliquary, 12th century, hidden here by the same antiquarians who scattered the rest. I've been searching for this particular item for 7 years. Bamburgh's hidden vault, 24. "You left the inscription at the lighthouse on purpose," Elliot said. "You wanted us to come here." "I wanted to see if you could." Crowe tucked the box into a leather satchel at his side. "You have persistence. That's rarer than you might think." Ozzy growled low in his throat, but stayed close to Elliot's leg. "There's a whole collection," Evelyn said. "You're trying to find all of it. That's what this is about." Crowe's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. The Northumberland collection was assembled over decades by scholars who understood that some things are too valuable to be left where careless hands might destroy them. I am simply completing their work. You're racing us, Elliot said. I'm racing time. You happen to be on the same track. Crowe moved toward the far wall, where Elliot now saw the outline of a second door, this one properly hinged and fitted with an iron ring. But I will offer you this. The final piece lies along the wall. Hadrian's wall. You'll find the location if you look more carefully than I did. He pulled the door open, and daylight flooded the chamber. Before he stepped through, he reached into his coat and Bamburgh's hidden vault. 25 tossed a small rolled parchment onto the pedestal. It landed in the dust beside Elliot's hand. A worthy opponent is a gift, Crowe said. Don't waste it. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud. Elliot unrolled the parchment. A Roman numeral 4 was drawn in the centre, and beneath it, a sketched outline of a wall snaking across hills. Coordinates were written in a precise, old-fashioned hand. He wants us to follow him again, Evelyn said. Her voice was tight with frustration. No. Elliot was still staring at the pedestal, his flashlight held low. He said to look more carefully than he did. He missed something. He crouched and aimed the beam at the stone surface. There, in the corner of the rectangular impression where the box had rested, was a scratch. It was faint, almost invisible in the gloom, but it was deliberate. A single line, curved at one end, with 3 short crosshatches beside it. That's not damage, Elliot said. It's a mark. Someone carved it on purpose before the box was put there. Evelyn leaned in. A signature? Or a direction? Elliot traced the scratch with his finger. Bamburgh's hidden vault 26. The curve. That could be a section of the wall. And these marks. He pulled out his notebook and copied the scratch exactly, then compared it to the coordinates on Crowe's parchment. They match. The crosshatches match the coordinates. But Crowe didn't see them. Because he was too busy looking at the box, Evelyn said slowly. He was methodical, but he was focused on the obvious thing. And I was looking at the empty space. Elliot stood up, his heart beating fast but steady. The scratch points to a specific section of the wall, a place Crowe doesn't know about yet. Ozzy barked once, tail wagging, and Evelyn smiled for the first time since they'd entered the vault. Then we'd better get there first, she said. Elliot folded the parchment carefully and tucked it into his notebook beside his sketch of the gargoyle. The vault felt smaller now, the air warmer, and the light from the open door seemed to reach further than it had a moment before. He clipped Ozzy's lead back on and followed his sister out of the chamber, leaving the empty pedestal and the dust and the scratch that Professor Crowe had overlooked. Bamburgh's hidden vault 27. Chapter 4. The wall's final secret. The wind came off the moor in long, steady pushes that flattened the grass and made Elliot's jacket snap against his back. He didn't mind. He was too busy scanning the length of Hadrian's wall as it snaked across the ridge, a spine of old masonry running east to west until it vanished into the haze. Ozzy trotted beside him, nose working the ground in short, busy sweeps. "This is it," Evelyn said. She held the parchment open, one hand pinning it against the wind. The Roman numeral 4 sat in the corner beside a rough sketch of the wall, and beneath that, in ink that had faded to brown, a single line. Where the watchtower meets the earth, the last piece waits. Elliot crouched and ran his fingers over a block of sandstone at knee height. The surface was pitted and worn, but the scratch from Bamburgh had taught him something. He wasn't looking for the obvious anymore. He was looking for the wall's final secret 28, what didn't belong. "The watchtower," he said, straightening. "There." About 40 yards ahead, a crumbling square of stone rose from the wall's line, its upper courses long gone, but its foundation still solid. Elliot started toward it, and Ozzy shot past him, ears flat, a black and white streak against the green. "Ozzy, wait!" But the terrier had already reached the tower's base and was digging, paws scrabbling at the dirt where the masonry met the turf. Clods of earth flew behind him. He barked once, sharp and insistent, then dug again. Evelyn caught up, still holding the parchment. "He's got something." "He's got a scent," Elliot said. He dropped to his knees beside Ozzy, and the dog stopped digging just long enough to look at him, tongue out, before resuming with fresh energy. The hole was already 6 inches deep, and Elliot could see the edge of something pale beneath the soil. "Not there," he said, and the thought arrived fully formed, the way it sometimes did when he stopped trying so hard. "The niche. The inscription says meets the earth, not under it. The wall's final secret, 29. He turned and pressed his palm against the lowest course of the tower's foundation. The stones were cold and rough, and he worked his way along them, feeling for any seam that shouldn't be there. Ozzy abandoned the hole and followed him, still barking. Evelyn knelt at the monument a few feet away, a weathered slab of Roman inscription half buried in the grass. She traced the letters with her finger. "This is a dedication stone. Legio 20th Valeria Victrix. The 20th Legion built this section." She looked up, and the wind caught her hair. If they left something here, it would be near their mark. "Here," Elliot said. His fingers had found a gap. It was narrow, no wider than his hand, and hidden in the shadow where 2 foundation blocks met at a slight angle. The niche had been cut deliberately, its edges too straight to be natural erosion. He reached inside and his fingertips brushed something small and cold. "I've got it." He drew it out carefully. A brooch, no bigger than a 50p piece, shaped like a running hare caught mid-leap. The detail was astonishing. Every muscle tensed, every whisker etched into the bronze. A pin on the back, still intact, and a catch that had held for nearly 2,000 the wall's final secret 30 years. "The last piece," Evelyn breathed. Ozzy sat down and wagged his tail so hard his whole back end swayed. "The unexpected tenacity of a terrier," said a voice behind them, calm and measured. "I should have accounted for that." Elliot turned. Professor Malachai Crowe stood 10 feet away, his dark coat snapping in the same wind, his silver-grey hair dishevelled for the first time Elliot had ever seen. He held his satchel open, and the interior was empty. No reliquary, no wooden bird, no brooch. "You found it," Crowe said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn rose slowly, the parchment still in her hand. "You knew we would." "I hoped." Crowe's steel-blue eyes moved from Evelyn to Elliot, then down to Ozzy, who had stopped wagging his tail and was watching the professor with a low, uncertain rumble in his throat. "The scratch on the pedestal at Bamburgh was deliberate. I left it to see if you would notice. You did." "You wanted us to get here first," Elliot said. "The wall's final secret, 31. I wanted to see if you could." Crowe closed his satchel. "The Northumberland collection is complete. 4 pieces, scattered across 18 centuries, and you 3 have brought them together. The reliquary, the bird, the cipher, and now the hair." He paused. "I have been searching for 7 years. You managed it in 4 days." Evelyn held his gaze. "What happens now?" "Now?" Crowe reached into his coat and withdrew the antique brass pocket watch. He pressed the crown, and behind him a section of the wall slid inward with a grinding of old stone on stone, revealing a dark passage that smelled of earth and cold air. Now the collection belongs to history. You will see that it reaches the museum in Newcastle, I trust." "You're not going to take it?" Elliot asked. Crowe smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "I never intended to keep it. I intended to find it. There is a difference." He stepped backward into the tunnel's mouth. "But there are other collections, older ones, and I suspect we will meet again." He pressed the watch crown once more, and the stone began to close. Just before it sealed, a small object flew out of the darkness and landed in the grass at Evelyn's feet. A weathered leather pouch, its surface etched with a symbol, the wall's final secret. 32 Elliot didn't recognise, a circle bisected by a single straight line, like a sundial with no numbers. The wall clicked shut. The wind kept blowing. Ozzy sniffed the pouch and sneezed. Evelyn picked it up and turned it over in her hands. The leather was old, the stitching frayed, and whatever was inside shifted with a faint, dry rustle. She looked at Elliot, and her expression was the one she wore when a puzzle had just begun to reveal its shape. "What is it?" Elliot asked. She didn't answer right away. She was studying the symbol, her brow furrowed, her thumb tracing the circle's edge. "Ozzy." Pressed his nose against her knee and whined. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I think Professor Crowe just gave us our next mystery."